I'm Greasy Will, and this is an inside East-West look at Studio 5. So this is Studio 5. It is the last of the studios here to be built in its current state anyway. It's the one that I've spent the least amount of time in. I actually was finishing up my time here as an assistant at East-West when we started building this room, so I got to be a part of the build of this room, but not necessarily like the use of this room. I never had to dig in on this console as much as I did on most of the other consoles here at East-West, and I never had to learn as much about the room itself. However, the cool thing about this room is, first off, this is one of the most famous consoles. Everything else in East-West, super rare. Studio 1, the 8078, Studio 2, the 8028, Studio 3, the Trident A range, but Studio 5, this is a console that is not rare. It is a console that was one of the most loved and distributed consoles during the 90s. This is the SSL. This is a G+/E, I believe, if I'm correct, 1 through 24 on this side are a G+, and the remaining 25 through 56 on this side are all E channels. The center section is in the middle of this console with this producer station. This is a really cool special feature. This isn't normal for a lot of consoles. This was a console that belonged to Rich Costey, which is kind of interesting because before it was East-West Studio 5, it was an office for some of the software guys that worked for the East-West sample libraries. And after that, it became the Studio 5. But before all that, back when this was Cello, this was Rich Costey's mix room. So it did not exist in here whenever Rich Costey was in here. This was at another place, but then they bought this off of Rich Costey to then put in this room. So it's got a cool little historical wave and some stuff that's been done here. A lot of the Chili Peppers songs have been mixed in here because, you know, that was the time frame. So this is the only real vocal booth at all of East-West. It's a very tiny little room, and it is specifically just for mainly vocals. Now, I've gotten away with doing some drums in here. It's just big enough to put a drum set in here and have a nice, tight drum set. In fact, to be very fair, this is probably as big as the live room of a lot of like people's home studios, or even like a reasonable size studio, to be honest. You know, I've seen a lot of studios about this size, but to us here in the instrument tracking world, this is an extremely small room. You could get a band in here. It would suck, but you could do it. But I have put drums in here before, and they sound great in here. It's just a really tight, small little vocal booth. Same as all the rest, we got hearbacks in here. It's pretty much always set up for vocals in here, but it's also occasionally the tape storage room, and sometimes there's a Fairchild in here. All over East-West, you'll find these T setups. It's probably one of those hospitality things that a major studio does that I never see in like small studios. It's like making sure that there is always a tea setup and there's always water. Now, because there's nobody in here, they don't have the pitcher in here, but they'll bring in a fresh pitcher of water for every session and have a nice tea setup for everybody to use whenever they need. This is the home of the world's shittiest piano. I always forget this is even here. This is some fucking bullshit. This is a really shitty upright piano. I think it is existence because somebody had it for a session. They were like, yeah, let's get a shitty upright piano. Can we find a shitty upright piano? And then somebody was like, yeah, okay. And then afterwards they're like, what do we do with this shitty upright piano? Like, hey, East-West, do you want a shitty upright piano? And East-West is like, you know what's funny? People actually do occasionally ask us if we have a shitty upright piano. It's one of those things like, at this stage in the world, if you're not trying to record the most beautiful piano that you've ever heard, then you're on the other side of it. You're like, I want the nastiest upright piano with all the noise and shit. Like, listen to that shit is loud as hell and it sounds like a dowel rod hitting a shower, you know? It's like fucking crazy. But, you know, it's got it's a sound, you know? Or maybe you're like trying to do some music for like a 1850s saloon in, you know, Cherokee, Wyoming or some shit. I don't know. Anyway, over here on this little box, you'll see that we've got our tie lines. This being the most recent room is the most advanced. It's one of the nice things about building a fresh room in an old studio. Whenever we built this studio, we were like, okay, what do we need in here? We absolutely need tie lines for 1 through 24 inputs. Are we gonna do more than that? Probably not. So 24 inputs, probably enough. What else do we need? Analog cue lines. What else do we need? Elco connectors for multi-track so we can put a tape machine in here. What else do we need? Digital Cat5 connections. What else do we need? Speaker connections, guitar connections, so that we can have a cabin here and the head out there and still be able to make songs. We can have a guitar player out there and an amp in here and use the ISO for its purpose. This is what more modern stuff is, and there's even room for other stuff that we just didn't have connected because you never know what the future will hold. Now, Studio 5 is generally set up more as a mix room or a vocal tracking room. I did a lot of Killer Mike's record in here. We did a lot of Frank Ocean's Blonde in here. This is more of that kind of single vocalist type of thing, but the control room's really big, and it's the only one with natural light. So it is kind of a cool vibe in here, and there's a lot of space. Obviously, you can see there's like 50 chairs in here. It's also cool for doing listening parties. It's also cool for having, you know, like 10, 15 people because they have a really nice lounge upstairs. That has been our tour of Studio 5. Make sure that you follow East West on all of their social media, and also follow me if you're not already at Greasy Will. And we will show you even more of the rest of East West.